Hi, this is Justin from Klaviactor Studios. In this tutorial, I will be going through what an example workflow could be like in going through and fixing up TrackTime files and going through notes and just ways that you can try and figure out the quickest and most efficient workflow where you're having Blender compute everything as much as possible to make sure that you don't make mistakes or accidentally miss a note and that kinds of stuff. How to keep organized through everything. This is particularly, yeah, I had bigger files than this, and sometimes I divided them based how magic from the character, and this is being administered, and so this is just one particular magic blast. That brings in these series of notes as they procedurally will uh, jump out of a waterfall, or well, so they start as like notes with it would be like rounded rectangles with water nodes on them, and then get hit by this chain electricity that's bringing all of them in, that the magic spawns and that kinds of stuff that's administered from the character, and yeah, and then they morph into little water sprites and dive down acrobatically into the keys, and so that's what I'm doing. Of course, there's so many different things you can do, but one of the key things with the workflow for making a 3D piano roller is figuring out the quickest and most efficient way to get through everything without making mistakes and that kinds of stuff, forgetting notes and that kind of thing. And so yeah, this is what it will kind of look like when you divide a track time file. You'll just get like literally a duplicate of your saved state from the mother file that was created that administered this child file. And so here's what the plugin, of course, looks like. Again, when you first pull the plugin up, it can just So these are like global. Uh, Options that you can have if you want like per file switches, and this is what you can choose to which panel do you want registered and showing up inside of the end panel. And so for me particularly, so I want this local. I want it auto applied on file load. We're going to go and we're going to put in the animation tools, the animation capture library. We're going to, and also for now, put the FX Designer panel, and later we'll add the render tools. And so then we hit apply. Let's just save this so it saves the local registration state for the toggle system of which panel we would like. And yeah, so I'll just walk through and use this as an opportunity just to walk through probably some of the most used tools that would apply to the workflow of creating a 3D piano roller. As you can see, you have audio visualization tools where you can just load in and place uh, your piano recording at any place that you would like on the timeline for it to start for wherever the notes are going to be going. And this was useful for animating the character and getting all the blasts of magic created and that kinds of stuff. And you can see here, extend the timeline. Yep, so that's that part. Anyways, a quick part. It goes pretty quickly, but that's that. And so, all right, get out of that. Then, of course, there's the keyframe adjustment tools in case you ever want to start uh, the piano roll animation duration of any kind, or there's just an object who's all the keyframes on that object, whether it's object, rig, um, slider value of any kind, that kinds of stuff. Children, you want to like start it at a different time. And then it just like it would be like the equivalent if you were manually doing it. You copied all the keyframes and then shifted them on the timeline yourself. It just guarantees that you don't accidentally miss something. Then, and this is one. This particular tool might not last, but it's like if you need like the exact size and number of what a node is supposed to be by the time it hits its target and the keys. That is something that can help. Then you got onion skinning tools just for debugging animation. And then you got the extras, which is Probably as one of the more common, just in the actual animation tools in the panel themselves, rather than the animation capture library. These tools end up as pretty useful. Yeah, so when you're using geometry nodes, which is a very common thing to use, obviously, a 3D piano roller, it's a fantastic hub for using FX and stuff like that. A fantastic shell for using things like that. And so this can take, three different scopes: selected objects, all objects, active objects, which you will see up here as an active object. And it will start out, just having a cacher called Blender Cacher in default, which will put it into the uh, local directory. So in this case, that's the TrackTime file directory. And so yeah, anything that has geometry nodes on it, it will switch those nodes over to bake from disk. And then it will also create a kind of like a deeper cacher file system within this Blender cacher file. So it will first start with the track time name, and as far as that directory goes, then it will do the object name, then it will do the node name, then it will do geometry nodes, and yeah, and then that's where you get your bakes saved. It just creates a far more secure system than just like dumping all the bakes into one file. And sometimes if you do things like that, you'll end up losing your bake data for some reason. That's just something that can happen, and so it keeps it very secure. It's a good idea to bake anything that you can. Obviously, you can't bake everything just because some things deal with like object transforms, and they might be rigged objects, and so if you bake it, it's going to give you something different that's based off of applied transforms that would be different than what your rig might have. But yeah, so like things like FX like lightning, all that kinds of stuff, simulated splashes and so on and so forth. Those are things that I've been baking, and so these are tools that have come in handy. I duplicate the water nodes or the splash nodes, and just disperse them around and that kind of thing. And then so you can also just click make unique node trees, and it will just also separate them at the same time. So then all you have to do is just go and narrow down the timeline, run the bake operator inside the node set, and move on to the next one. And this is also a really useful tool because Cryptomat is a saving grace for 3D piano rollers. And so this helps you keep organized throughout all these files and not make mistakes where, some materials got like prefixes or, I mean, suffixes on them, 0.001, 0.002, and so it normalizes those materials. It makes sure everything always has a base name. Of course, it deals with the scope. It's something that you should definitely use in mind. If there ever was something that you wanted to keep, it will get rid of that and it will give it its base name and keep everything on that. But when you're working with Cryptomat, of course, you don't want all these, materials with these suffixes on them, because now you're going to have to create compositing node trees for those suffix materials as well, and that's just annoying to have. And then you have a driver retarget. Sometimes, yes, when you're bringing in objects from other scenes just to redisperse node sets onto objects like I've been doing with the notes and the characters. I'll bring in a character and a note set that's already been done, and then I'll just use this copy non-rig modifiers to active or from active, and so that just literally goes and gives them everything that they need. And so for things like that, often they'll sometimes end up with a missing object slot inside the drivers that are driving some of the effects of the water nodes. And, so this can quickly just run through everything in the scene. However, this should be used with discretion, that it's going to ruin anything that is set up where it's like you copied a driver as new that's a slider value that you're manually keyframing onto like all these other objects. Say like the very last two notes for each hand are actually logs that like are struck by the the lightning chaining through the notes and that kind of stuff, and it springs them down. It turns them into tree characters and that kind of stuff. And they use drivers all over the place to run their morphing process. And so I actually ran that with those in the scene when I did the last file, and I saved this file for a tutorial file. This is actually just before the last file, and it completely ruined them. So I had to go back to a previous save and just put them in their own file so I could run it. Um, but yeah, it is handy for that kinds of stuff because it's annoying to go through all those objects and reset up, the objects or just node sets. Often yes, if you're going to have the same thing on each node, you're probably going to take that particular property out of the modifier properties for like the geometry node modifier set and just make it local to you know like inside the geometry node editor and not have it there. It's just a lot easier that way. But that's just one of those things. It's a quick fix for stuff like that. It's about getting rid of as many seconds as possible and keeping everything as like computer calculated as possible, just so you don't like miss anything at the same time. But that is definitely something to use with discretion on things like you know, anything that's like, a driver that's ran off of keyframes that's just controlling other sliders on other objects and that kind of thing. And this is something that is just for like a quick select. You can use a suffix or a prefix name, like so for the morph nodes, like easy morph effector and stuff like that. That's how I like mass select those objects and apply the transparent materials to them. So it's like, and I'm going to demonstrate how I've been using this. And so I'll just go and like type TRANSP and then hit enter, and then transparent material goes, and then you just apply to select. And so instead, you don't have to go through the outliner and click through all those objects and apply the material that way. And then, of course, yeah, so yeah, you have the mass material applier there. And this is another one, this G and batch control thing. If you ever have anything in geometry nodes where you don't want to take things out of the property panel, but you want to change things on selected object, it will pull up your geometry node set inside the end panel right here. So anything that you would see right here is going to pull up in here, and you can toggle what value you would want passed on to anything that's in the scope, active, selective, or all. And it will change all of the settings for all those objects to match that. Do keep in mind that you should use the toggles because a lot of things use like local, like for the lightning, the chain lightning that I'm using. It's like you want like its local collider where it's reading, where to have its endpoint so you can animate that so it's like it looks like the notes are chaining themselves in. And yeah, so you don't want those changed because now it's like you're going to have to go and change all those back to their local settings. And the goal is to not have to run through anything. You just put the start and the end frame and then you move on. And yeah, and that's just an example. Of course, that can apply to anything else. It just changes anything in their property settings based on the scope that is ran on them. And yeah, so that's the extras. Those are some handy tools. I use them a lot. And yeah, so and this is definitely was the saving grace for just making a 3D piano roller, something that could just arguably be a fun type of art project. And this has been cool because it's like it can procedurally pass on animation, however you're wanting to do it inside the following notes. And so it's going to take your first animation, you're going to animate something, capture that animation, name it or whatever, define its root, capture it, and you can either pass it on individually, you'll load that rig there, and or you can use a paste K and yeah, paste to multiple selected ones. And the order, so you'll click on the rigs and then you'll add them in here. And the order that they're created in this list is the order that they'll be passed on each. So, say This one is started at 2,850. If we put in an offset of 3, like I've been doing, the next one will start at 2,853, then 2,856, 2,859, so on and so forth. And yeah, just be sure to have aligned to target shell. It started out without this, and I was having to go through and fix up the NZ location values. It started out a little bit different. I just recently got it fixed up. The goal for this very first 3D piano roller that I was doing was just to go and fix up the plugin and that kind of stuff and decide what needs to be and what doesn't need to be in, the 3D piano roller studio. And so, yeah, yeah. You don't have to have this, but you should. This works really more. The reason that I left this option in there is just because, if you don't want to use it with, the concept of falling notes and stuff like that, maybe for something else that's just moving on the ground or whatever, it works a lot more perfectly like that, with this not toggled. This will give you a Z offset if you wanted for some odd reason. I actually originally had this in there for debugging stuff, but I left it in there just because sometimes it's nice to have more options. Greater will undershoot it, less will overshoot it, and yeah. So yeah, that's the animation capture library. Yeah, if you are doing an individual one, make sure there's nothing in the paste K, and it will work just fine. And always, yes, always have your root bone name defined. And yes, and then there's the pose library. The pose library is really cool, so you don't ever have to go and yes, get an identical pose that you've already done multiple times. So it's like for me, I'm doing tucks and dives for acrobatics, and so I'll just refresh that here. And so yeah, so it's like I have a Rigify dive. No, that's an old one. So I have Rigify dive one, Rigify dive end, Rigify tuck, and so it has to be on a rig that is exactly identical to the one it was captured from, or just even the very same one if that's something that is a scenario. But yeah, so what you can do is you can either load this pose to the active rig, or you can schedule poses to be keyframed. So it's like we're going to toggle all these, and then we're going to number them. One, we got our dive start. If we go into the tuck, we name that two. Three, our dive end, which is identical to the dive pose. And for the tuck, we're going to hold it for 5 frames. And yeah, so the multiple schedule, and we'll just give it 10 frames, and then you just go and you fix up, the distance between your frames for how you want it to work. And when you're creating poses and you want to have them related to each other for something that you would go through and schedule like this, it's best to make sure that when you create the pose and you capture the pose, which is like, so you have your pose created, you click this plus button, it will record which bones to select when it loads that pose, so you can work with it more easily. Um, but yeah, so it's best to have like even if you don't need that bone selected, just for kind of like sculpting it up into something more perfect, because it's not going to be perfect like this just because it's just scheduling keyframes to be created so you can just go through and adjust them and that kind of thing. You want it's best just to stay organized, just even if a certain pose didn't need a bone adjusted or anything like that, just to have it recorded as part of the pose. Yeah, so that's just kind of like the basis of the pose library. It's kind of nice and makes animation a lot faster. And yeah, and then we have the FX panel, and it is very, very highly advised to go through the FX panel to get things started because everything programmatically works with how the FX panel fixes up the notes, and that's just what we're about to get started with here. Yeah, so you can create a custom session with only a node or add in your own custom character. If you don't want to use the Klaviactor character generator system, but you want it like to have characters in all of your notes like they it would do the same thing. It would be a good idea to definitely try and create your own character generator system just to speed through things because it takes a while. That's why this is in there. Yeah, and then we also have the create a character for tree morphing system, which is the trees that I used in the demo that you see that we'll go over into logs. One of the concepts that I was thinking of when I had the idea for this 3D piano roller is like, what would people like to do? What's cool about a 3D piano roller? It's like, well, it's something different than rounded rectangles. It's like, oh, it's a rounded rectangle. Oh, it's not. So that was the idea of that, the concept of morphing, and so that's where just the name of Morph ties into everything. You'll get a MorphNotes collection that's created when you go through any of these, and when you send it back, it sends everything back suffixed in either a dash char collection. I'm gonna add a tool. It's not in there yet, but like a dash, anything of your own name that you would want, and then the note goes into a dash note collection, and that's nice because you can control everything through here because the outliner can get sometimes really drawn out and it's really annoying to go with. So you can control, dash char collection, dash note collections, dash other collections, dash anything with a suffix and that kinds of stuff that you gave it. And yeah, and a lot of the times when you're using morph nodes, you'll have instances and you don't need those instances because you want the render streamer linking in the actual morph note collection that's taken there, and so that's kind of like your target collection. Therefore, you'll often have reason to move like the dash char and the dash note collection as instances to their instance collections because you don't want them in there. And so this is something that you can use to do that, and you can restore them if need be, so you can control them again through here. And yeah. So that is that. Then you have the FX library, and this can be handy to get set up for like any of your own node sets if you have any reasons to use your own node sets, just because it can it runs through like this model process. It's like it's going through every individual morph notes collection that there is, and it's placing one of these inside of that morph notes collection in its own collection, and it's also giving it a suffix to everything in that collection that is brought into the morph notes collection of the FX that's appended in there. Of course, these are for things that go locally on objects, so that custom node sets is what goes locally on objects, but the FX, a lot of the times you'll want them all in every morph node collection. So instead of going through every morph note collection yourself, you just click that, and then like so for me, I'm using these light edge splitting morph nodes, and it just loads them in procedurally into each morph nodes collection that there is, and it just makes things a lot quicker. It gives them a suffix. Everything that has some naming format to this note right here that originally starts out is a token to control anything that would be in the morph notes controller. So it's like, so if you have this, you can also go from selection, it will toggle that particular morph notes collection that shares the note name. Yeah, so these note names just act like tokens to get a hold of to doing something to that morph notes collection or anything, even in the extras that we have over here. Like you want to manually give something like a collection or an object a suffix of a note, so you can use that as a note token if you need to. You just want to stay organized, or you want to try another thing you can also do is you apply like TrackTime file suffixes to from the dot blend over to the active collection, because it's like, you're going through FX, and so you're calling everything note intro FX, and every track time file has a note intro FX. And so, the most organized way is to just, apply a track time suffix from the dot blend over to that. You want to manually send something into this note's position and parent it into that place so that scroll bounds, which is this object right here, drives it down as part of the notes. You just make sure that you have the token. You can select this, or you can select, yeah, its little target marker empty right there. And it gives you the active token. You can see it right here. Yep. Target name, yeah, note token right there. And so that gives you the note token. If ever you wanted to use it in some way, shape, or another, it will go into that active position for anything that I send over with that operator. Yeah, and then so these are for. Um, yeah, these are for when you're bringing in characters from the character gen system. You're going to match the size of the rig to its target shell that gets created when you pull it in through the FX panel. And and there's also a operator inside there for that. But this is just in case you bring something else in. If you ever did use your own rigging system, the meshes will need a dash care mesh name, and I am going to put in, or it's not in there right now, but it will be in there. So it's a toggle that when you use send to a dash care collection, it's going to give the body of the mesh a dash care mesh name, and so you can just use that to scale it perfectly in its current pose to what the exact size of this note would be. And yeah, and that is that. And so let's get started. So to get started with the morph session, first we're going to disable the keyboard so we can see the world center, and make sure a note is selected and active, and I will go through these chronologically. And I will click on the operator create morph with Klaviactor character generator rigged and ready. That's going to pull up this mesh. And you can make it look different as you so wish in various ways that I thought. So it's some reusable concept for you know, like humanoid characters that would be following into notes would probably look best as, which is kind of like maybe kind of like a cherub type looking face that it can start out as, but then you can also make it more like a sprite, like a creature type of thing, as the eyes like become a bit more like horizontally oval and pointy ears and that kinds of stuff. Maybe a little bit more of a feminized amount, or just to its face, control its stomach size, bring in the torso, maybe trimmer arms, a little bit of trimmer legs. We'll just go with that. Then we click on create rigged character. If at any time you want to cancel the session, just click cancel the morph session right there. Okay, yeah, and so here we are, and you see when we first brought the node in, it created this little target shell right here, which is kind of it's a duplicate of the note, but it was put into the target shells collection right here. Yes, you see dash target shell. It's there for the animation library to compute, but it's also there for the user to compute, just so they know this is where that note would need to be. By the time it's reaching its target in the piano keys. All right, yeah, so now we got the rigged character. And what I have been doing is I go to the pose library and I am measuring the characters and their height by a rig, or by a dive pose, excuse me. Oops, and you go into pose mode, select the rig, go into pose mode. Okay, load pose to rig. Alrighty, we'll just go back into object mode. And definitely don't scale any character designed for a note and you want to use the animation library in pose mode, just because the root needs to be at a flat 1 value all the way through. Otherwise, it won't be able to match the animations perfectly. And so, yeah, And then you'll go to match rig to target shell, and that'll put it right there. And then we just go and we send the object back into position. And now let's get the node rigged up. Click rig node, click on the rig, and it's best to click on the parent just for a more definitive um, statement on what's going on here. It's best to click on the parent and send the parent into position. Otherwise, it's going to keep the parent and the child relationship, and it says that they're parent and child if you do that most commonly. But a lot of the times, if you like send both into position or just the node, all of a sudden like the rig is no longer like acting as a parent of the node, and so if you move the rig in object mode, it doesn't move the node, and it works like that for pretty much everything. So always send the parent uh, and don't worry about anything else. And so we're going to send that back into position, and we are going to apply changes and close, and that cleans everything up. And we're going to move on to the next, and we'll just use that one. All right, load pose to rig, back into object mode. Rig to targets and object into position. Oh, yes. And another thing that I've been doing, you will have to go and, loop these up because they don't start with much for mesh division of any kind. And, if you want to animate them, you'd like them to bend. And so in order to bend, I have been doing this at the moment, just for my round of things. It won't be the same. The All the black keynotes actually, for some reason, had these 20 vertices that needed to be cleaned up and merged. That won't be in the release version of it, but that's what I've been having to do. All right. I forgot to do that on the last note. But yeah, it's just so they deform better. Do that. And that. Set object to position. Apply changes and close. And let's just leave that up. Alright. And then you move to the next one. And let's just do this. And yeah, so it's pretty much rinse and repeat. And I'll just skip through the rest of these and get those done. Or not skip through the rest of them. I'll just stop the recording here and get through the rest of them, and we'll start on the next process and moving through a TrackTime file, or an example of how to. Okay, so as you can see now, everything's all rigged and ready to go. One thing that I do like to do is just to pull back in the project prep tools, just to give everything matching colors. Anything that has the notes naming format in it anywhere will receive that color when this operator is red. Let me go. Okay, apply panel tones. Okay, yeah, so color code, notes, and viewport. And boom, you can see. Now the characters have matching colors to the notes. And I will pull that back out. Save. Okay, yeah, and so the next step is going into the FX panel and getting all the first refresh the MorphNotes controller and see so you can see how you could easily control all of this stuff from this, which is a little easier than going through everything individually in the outliner, especially the more and more it gets drawn up if you had more notes in there. So I'll minimize this at first. Okay, yep. So we got light edge splitting morph nodes selected. All right, append and all. Oh yeah. So now we have append into all or selected morph nodes, and I'm just going to run this. Let's make sure nothing from them is selected. Select scene collection. Because if it is selected, it will just do the selected ones, even though I didn't have anything selected, just to be on the safe side. And there could be some weird exception that I wasn't thinking of that ended up. But yep, so it goes in there in a model process in the background and puts all of this stuff in there, and it's done. And you can see everything is suffixed with the note name, collection, and objects. And now the next step, I'm going to go and give all the planes that control the space in which each instance from the morph node. So when it moves up, it starts out as the note. The more it moves up and closer to the mesh, the more the note implodes in, and or the character implodes in and becomes the character as the note explodes out, and it's kind of like an illusion of a morph that's taking place. And where am I? All right, so we've got, all right, easy morph effector. We'll go to select matching objects. See how they all got. Oh, first I actually have to create the transparent material. Excuse me 1 second. All right. Okay, easy morph effector. Okay, slide match. All right. And now you can see they all have that material, so I don't have to worry about accidentally forgetting one or anything like that. And the next item of agenda would be, um, yeah, it's time to start bringing in the visualization tools to start animating the notes. So now just get it from another file. I have all of this stuff originally set up in all the other files. They all have the same format, except at first I wasn't linking the character I was appending in, so I can't actually link it in from a file that I linked it into as well. So I'll find an earlier file. Let's go in here, collection, start with landscape ref. Gives us the landscape, the waterfall visualization, shrink wrap product. Let's turn on the piano keyboard. Okay. Link in the character. And yeah, and we're just going to recycle the character magic and just re-keyframe that. But I think he only has one throw magic that he does in this round. So, we need one. I'll just delete these. Okay, so that's everything for the visualization that we need. And just to keep everything as light as possible, I am going to take out everything but the actual note that I'm going to start out animating. Let's go into the MorphNotes controllers here, select all, hide in view layer, unselect all. Let's pick the first one, show in view layer, and let's hide the MorphNotes, let's hide the character, let's keep the note active. All right. And yeah, now it's time to animate the character magic. So, um, here. Not sure if I baked this one or not. I have to go and see. If I did, yep. Yeah, so these ones weren't very heavy, and so baking them just started seeming frivolous to time. Let's go. Let's see, active object. Yeah, so let's give it a new cache, separate it from its old one, save, delete. So we can move the keyframes and other things, and really move the trim node. Yeah, so this is a an FX from someone else's package. I'll post the link to all the FX from other uh, other people's packages that I purchased on SuperHive on here. Uh, most of the stuff that you'll see in the FX panel, I got as some form of another from an open source tutorial. Some of the stuff is my own, though, the water nodes and that kinds of thing, materials and that kinds of stuff. But so, yeah, let's see, where is he throwing magic here? Let's go back. All right, let's pull these keyframes here, zoom into the timeline. Let's delete out all the other location keyframes, and I have a disable and enable, so it starts out disabled in the render viewport. See exactly when it is that I want it. So it kind of looks like the orb should start building or appearing pretty soon. He's about to go up for a strike. Yep, there he is. All right, there we go. And so we'll have the animation with the orb building start right there. Move this into place. Let's move these keyframes over here. Now let's move this into place. Green here. Make this the new location, and let's just have this orb travel with his hands as he rotates up for a blast of magic to throw into the waterfall. And normally you don't have to like animate every keyframe, but for stuff like this, it just leaves you on the safe side that it's just going to turn out kind of how you need it. Get in there. Let's see how this went. Yeah. Yeah, good. Alright, and let's be sure to move the trim nodes, or the trim shield, over to exactly where the playhead's at, which is where the enable keyframe is at, so that that begins. Go a little bit longer. Right. Okay. So I think I'm just going to move this to the left a little bit. Keyframe that location. Okay. That is good enough. Now it's time to get started animating the node. Let's go into pose mode, start the animation here, take the root, slide it over here, rotate it. Let's get started right here. Location, rotation. Let's move it down a little bit. Let's give us some safety space from the top of the terrain. And let's see. Okay. Let's see where we should be here. Yep. Go with that. And its endpoint doesn't have to be like perfectly like as the computer would have it in the target shell, but it's close enough. You see right here, it turns into a character anyways. The character is more perfect. That's all that's really important. Let's see what we got here. See if we can even have it show up sooner. Yeah, it's good enough. Yeah, okay, yeah, now let's give it some just animation on for some bend out of it, so that when it appears, it's not just some deformed, water deformed rounded rectangle going out. Something waterfall, like that. And then just duplicate this and restore it. Yep. All right, and so yeah, what you're gonna do when you go to capture this particular animation that we just created here. We're going to go into the animation tools or the animation capture library. Within the animation tools, I'm going to go here, going to create a new entry. Call this note 125, name it after its time, 7.3. And you can load in animations that you've created in other files here, but you know, in such cases, when you're animating like locally for stuff like this, normally they have like different Z locations that they were based off of for other throws of magic and stuff like that, and so they wouldn't really work as well. And can't really, yeah, you have to animate at least once per file in such cases. Yeah, so okay, so we have our entry, we have our name, now it's ready to capture the animation. What we do is we select all control rig bones that were animated, and that's these two right here. That's the root, that's that. We have our root listed here. In the root bone string slot, you just go and enter root right there. If you're using Rigify, if you're using something like AutoRig, it would generally be like CPose or something like that. And yeah, and so then we select all keyframes and make sure those are all selected, and we click capture from pose, and it will make all the way through that. And since we're offsetting every 3 frames, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, move 3 up on the timeline. Let's go into object mode. Let's go back down into our MorphNotes controller. We're going to just turn everything on, select all. Oops, show in view layer. Let's hide the characters and hide the morph nodes. Okay, so we just have the nodes shown now. And yeah, so from this point, this is now when we get to choose the order in which everything goes, starting in a series of an offset of 3 frames. So it seems like it would look best. I don't know, you know, these notes are somewhat closer to each other, even though you would think a chain lightning going this way would look good. It could also end up making it look like a little cluttered with this note, but sometimes it does look fine. You know, these are just one of those things, you know, you just really got to pick one. And yeah, so I don't know, I'll do it like this. I'll do this one. And, yeah, so you click on the rig, click on the little plus button right there. And then we'll just do it like this. Okay, and that should be all of them. Alright. Oh wait, no, whoops. There's one little one up here. 2, 8. Okay, yeah, now that should be all of them. And now we just go, let's say we have 3 set right there. We have our root defined, and we, let's see, have as aligned to target shell, and now we can just run paste to rig. Okay, let's get in closer here. There we go. Yeah, and everything lines up perfectly in its target shell. And generally, the rule seems to be if you go with a 3 frame offset over time, the notes just very gradually move up. With a 4 offset, they very gradually move down, and that seems to be uh, a pattern I've noticed so far. Yeah. And so that's that, and we can wipe all this. Now it's time to move on to the characters. So let's go and let's just hide everything again. Hide in view layer, unselect all. Let's go back to our first note here. Let's show that one. Let's also show the character now. Oops, there we go. Okay, and so we're going to take both the character rig and the note rig in pose mode just because you want to perfectly track the note just so it's like everything stays defined. So when you're morphing, they need to be aligned with each other for the morph to go successfully. And let's go back to its first keyframe. Let's take these both into pose mode. And so something to note. Oh, wait, yes, first, actually, what you have to do is you have to make sure that the character is actually, so let's just hide the note real quick so we can see what's going on here. Yeah, so in object mode, you need to take the character's rig and make sure that it is lined up exactly into its target shell. Yep, looks pretty good. Could maybe go up just a smidgen. Okay, that looks good. Alright, let's turn the note back on. Select both rigs. And it is imperative. All the characters do need to be manually placed into their target shells. At the moment, I don't have anything that does that. It really just it snaps them to these little markers. They're so easy to get hold of, and because of you know, where their origin is at on the bottom. It places them in such a way that you'd have to go and fix up the target shell. In the future, it's quite possible that it will place it directly inside the target shell, but at the moment, that's how that works. And so let's take both of these rigs into pose mode. Make sure we're on the notes first keyframe, and we are. And yeah, so an important thing to note about the character rigs is they're kind of created for, or they are created for acrobatics, and having the root on the bottom for acrobatics is really unideal. And so there's an acro root that I put on there, a root for acrobatics, because if you have your root on your bottom, of course, you could probably piece it together. It boomerangs around because that's where the pivot's at, and it's not really ideal for just moving around in a fluid acrobatic-like motion. So as you can see, it's like, so if you're going to rotate like this, rotate like that, it moves just like around its pivot point. And so if you move it, actually, these character rigs by that, you're going to leave the acro root behind just because the acro root is actually the parent of the root now. And the root is there only really for calculations that the animation capture library would need. This root needs exactly one keyframe value at least some point throughout its animation cycle in order for it to align perfectly inside its target shell. Without one, it won't land perfectly inside its target shell, but you're animating your location and rotation based off the acro root. So we're going to pull that in like this. Here. Let's rotate it to a similar degree to match the note. Okay. And let's go back to the notes root here. Let's go to the next keyframe. Take the character again, match it up to the note. Oops. Go back to the note root, next keyframe. And so pretty much Just tracking the node all the way up to this point. Just keyframe that, location, rotation. And let's see where the node brings us next. Okay, and so this is really the part where location is all that really matters. Um, the morph in such a system that I'm doing right here generally starts to look when the note flops down like that. That's kind of when it's like it's flopping into the character and morphing in such a way that would like give it the illusion like it's almost like turned into like some momentum for some kind of acrobat or pull out of an acrobat that is going on. And so right here. I'll just start the acrobats right here, and so I'll just keyframe the location. Or actually, no, I'll keyframe, yeah, I'll do location and rotation because I can start it right here. It doesn't have to start for. And yeah, let's go to the notes. Let's just get the Z target location all set up here. So this is when we want our Z value to be perfect. Just turn going upside down vertically on Z here. Let's get it to its target shell. Let's hide the note so we can see. Okay. Just a smidgen up. Let's go with that. Now let's insert a location value for the keyframe, and now we're going to change the timeline. It's going to restore our dive pose that we originally had here. And so this is where the beginning of the acrobats begin. Let's start right here and say so. Let's see, how much time does it have until it reaches its target? It has time for probably about 2 flips. Let's give that a try and see what it gives us. Okay. Space up just a little bit. Whoops, yeah, there was one thing. It needs to be on XYZ Euler. Yeah, right now it's on Quaternion. That will just go to the nearest value for rotations that are made rather than if you're doing acrobats, you need XYZ Euler. I completely forgot about that. Okay, yep, sorry about that. I might actually have to go and yeah, I have to go. I need the note back on. I forgot. I need to make it so by default this bone is actually at XYZ Euler when it's appended, and it was on the list of things that I had in my notes to do, and I forgot to do that. Let me just get the note back on. Okay. So I have to re-keyframe the rotation values. Yeah, seems like it should persist that because it just needs the most recent rotation value keyframes. Okay. Let's hide the node again. Okay. And goes a little fast. It's hard to see there, but kind of works. You might have to start. Yeah, that works. It's just kind of a faster flip. Let's see. And let's see. Let's just break it into a 360. So it's spinning in a 360 on the Z as it completes its entry into the keys. Okay, yeah, that should be good. Good enough. One of the things that you have to visualize when you're doing uh, I think it should be fine, but it is possible that some of the notes could just not be pulling out of their flip just because the character, he or she, it's a water sprite, is pulling out of its flip, really close to the keyboard, and I am pretty sure it's going to be quite right. I just recently got this thing pretty fixed up, and it seems to be perfect, but I think we'll find out here in a second. All right, so now it's time to create the animation for the dive and the tuck, and then going back into the dive, and this is where the pose library comes in handy. And we're going to go into the pose library. We're going to schedule our animation to be created. And I already have the setup from earlier as I went through it. And just make sure if you're holding that the pause uh, toggle is on. And yeah, so we'll just run a multi-pose schedule from here. And I created our animation. And to see it, let's just load the pose to rig. And here we are. And so we want the character going into the dive a little bit sooner. That, not bad. It's probably going to have to pull out sooner. Here. Yeah. Okay. Just watch that real quick. And there we go. And that's how to quickly animate. And let's see. Ah, yes, and I almost forgot. And it also seems like, let's see, where is... Alright, so this is where I put in the target location value. I'm going to want this just a little bit further on the y-axis, just so it's like not going to become a victim of the waterfall simulation of any kind. And And then, yes, one of the key things is remember to keyframe the root, or otherwise you won't be able to um, match perfectly into the target marker for all the animations. And don't use acro root as the root at the same time. The root has to be measured on the bottom, or it won't work. Okay. Okay. Cool. And so we can get out of the pose library here. Yeah, just to quickly get a hold of all the bones that we need. Actually, I'll go and load post rig. Then we select our root, select our acro root, select all keyframes. We're gonna leave this as root, of course. And then we're gonna do char 1, 2, 5, 7, 3. And we're going to capture from pose. Okay, and then to match the notes, we're going to offset again by 3. Oops. Alright, go back down into the MorphNotes controller here. Select all, show and view layer. Okay, let's show the characters now. Okay, and so now let's go back into object mode. Fix all these up. Ah, yes. And on notes that have like black keys that are a little bit thinner and stuff like that, or white notes that are like really big, that kind of thing. I've been giving them shape keys. They're some kind of procedural concept of an element. Them compressing down to fit into the keys looks completely natural, and so I will create shape keys so that. As this water sprite enters into the keys, its mesh compresses so it looks like it fits more naturally. And let's see, looks pretty good. Right, should be fine. Okay. So got that one. Let's see. Okay. Alright. Should be all of them. Okay, let's turn the notes back on. So then I need to re-verify exactly the order that I went in with the notes here. I got that. Okay, so select this, the pose library here, animation. Okay, so we go that and rig. What's next? Obviously, this one should be next. This. That one. These two. Okay. Okay, let's go back to our target playhead. So that's 2824. And alright. Everything looks like it's in there, unless I accidentally thought I hit the plus button, but I did when I was on route. That should be all of them. And because there's more bones to run through, the characters will generally take longer than the notes. So you just gotta be patient, but it gets done. Alright. And let's just temporarily disable the notes just to make sure that all of our characters are exiting out of their acrobatics just in time for the keys. Let's get that view here. Yep, looks pretty good. Yeah, and they all match perfectly into their marks inside the target shells. Pretty cool. It was definitely a must. At first, I was going to go through and animate all of those notes, and I don't think would have lasted very long. Definitely gets pretty annoying to animate so many objects. All right, so that's the animation all set up. Yeah, let's verify it with the notes just to make sure they're, where they need to be for their morph nodes, and everything looks close enough. Yep, good. All right, and So let's now the next step is going to set up the morph nodes and get everything logged for the nodes inside of the render schedule for the render streamer. So we're going to show the morph nodes or the morph nodes. Um, yeah, let's color the morph nodes too. So let's get the render tools and the project prep tools in there. Let's go and do color the morph nodes and their objects. Alright, color by pitch. Okay. And let's get that back out of there. Okay, yeah, so we don't need the animation capture library anymore. We can definitely just get that out. And yeah, okay, yeah, and so we got the render tools. This is where we create a render schedule. This is for standard one. We don't need that. Yeah, and so this has just a bunch of like double checker tools. I'll just run through real quick. It just helps you stay correct and up to speed on what's really been or ready to be put inside the render schedule. So it's that's why it's best to go with the MorphNotes system because it starts looking for how many morph note collections do we have, which ones do we have, and so it's like all of these are missing because we haven't gone through them yet. 0 of 11 added. You can limit to a range for the entire file just to make sure, say something was supposed to be brought in at 2300. You accidentally put 22,300. It helps prevent mistakes like that. If anything has a greater end time than start time, or I mean a lesser end time than start time, it will tell you if there's something that just won't work. Say you have an end time of 250 and a start time of 300. You just can't have that. And so it'll tell you if you have that. Every entry starts at wherever the playhead is at, and the end time is also the same as the start time. And I'll show you that. So yeah, so it'll start 2857, 2857. It'll tell you up here one of our entries has the same in/out frame, and until you change that will always be there. You can also load in directories just to see what files, .blend files, have entries in your schedule, how many entries there are, just to make sure that you've been through all the every file in each directory. So I have like an assets directory, I have a TrackTime directory. They all have things that I need brought in, and that's how I can verify whether or not they all got entries, which view layer you're on. So I'm using main view layer for the notes. And that's definitely be sure if you're using something other than view layer, remember to change your view layer name. And yep, and then that will update right there. And now it's time to get started. And let's go into here. And this is just how I've been getting started with the morph nodes and keeping track of things, or getting the morph nodes set up and keeping track of which ones I've been through. And so we'll just get started with that. And all right. So let's expand this because we need the meshes that are paired or that are children of the rigs. Let's go into here. Let's pick out the character mesh. Let's pick out the node mesh. Let's see exactly when the entry time needs to be. And that's a safe entry time. We'll use this. Create an entry. Make sure it's toggled as a collection. And select the collection. Use active. And now we have 1 of 11 added. And now I'm going to disable the -care and -note collections. And then I'm going to go into here, and I've just been starting them now, disabled in the viewport and disabled in the render. Move over one on the playhead. just toggle keyframes like that. And then I've just been predicting keyframes with how their plane collections move. There we go. Let's see, insert location. I'm going to say this one's going to be further back. I don't know exactly for sure though. Sometimes they go forward, but it's because it's a bit of a lower animation. I'm going to say that you're moving it behind the playhead instead of before the playhead for where it first starts. Scale this up that way. And then just so I can see in the viewport, oh yeah, I actually do need, I forgot, it has the animation capture library. Just so I can see in the viewport that I have completed this note, I'm going to disable its target shell. And that's a little sooner, so it's actually before the playhead that I needed. Okay. Yep. Yeah, and so the concept that I've been going by with this so far is that pretty much when the note kind of restores itself back into its original transform, kind of like that momentum that drives from the restoration as it moves down into that is kind of like something that propels the morph into the acrobats of the character as they move into as it moves into the key. And that should be good for that one. And so let's see, it's completely out of view right here. And so in the render streamer, we're going to purge this collection at what the playhead is, which is 2869. And there we go. Yeah, and so now that's all matched up. We don't have the same start and end time, and we're good to go on to the next one. And just expand this, and it's pretty much just a rinse and repeat. Put the character mesh, put the note mesh in, and we'll select the note mesh. When do we need our entry time? Disable its target shell. Okay, and that looks like a safe entry time. Add another entry, make sure it's a collection, use active, disable dash care and dash note, go into here, set its viewport and render settings, just keyframe that with the little side keyframe toggles there, move over one on the timeline, make them active in the viewport and in the render, and then we'll go into the object that dictates the morph, this little plane right here, set it down so that the note shows, and put in a z value. We'll move that down z value over just a little bit. Seems to be like that might be a pattern that would work. And keyframe its end point. Move that over this way. And let's see. Looks about right. And it's completely out of view at about 2876. And so now we have 2 of 11 added, 9 missing, 2 entries total, of course. And yeah, it's just a rinse and repeat for all of these, and I'll just finish these up and stop recording right here, and we'll begin on the next process. And I will see you there. This is Justin from Klaviactor Studios, and in this tutorial, I will be walking through an example of what a workflow could be like, going through TrackTime files and getting all the notes situated for a certain type of theme. And this particular theme that I'm using in this demo, I am making a magical waterfall, so the notes, spring out of the waterfall as electricity, change them in, and then morph into little water sprites that dive down into the keys. So here in front of me, you can see what you'll get when you divide a certain track time. And this one, I'm only using 9 notes just to get through it really quick. But yeah, so here are your notes. This is what I set up, a render bake keyboard. Yeah, so this is just something I'm putting into the bake simulation for the flip fluid simulation that I'm making. And also it masks out, just anything below the keyboard, which I'm doing other stuff with. Um, and yeah, and so that's like the note holdout mask, the render mask, that kind of stuff. That takes the position of the piano or the shape of it. Anyways, yeah, so, but for visualization purposes, we are not using those at all. In fact, it's going to be the piano keyboard that we're going to be using. So yeah, to get started, this is, of course, what the plugin will initially always look like. Okay, so now you can see that I have all my MorphNote collections set up and logged into the schedule, ready to be printed out with this operator right here, add custom to schedule. And yeah, so again, yes, you have a limit to frame range checker. Let's see, so the first one starts at 2840. This is 2800 to 3100. And yep, they're all inside just a reasonable range. And the layer's all set up. And that's good to go. Let's have a look at it just one more time. And another way to debug whether or not like you put in like a visible or an invisible, so it starts invisible and then shows up as visible. Uh, when you're first starting out in your process and you want it appended in a linked way, or not appended in, you want it linked in a way that it shows up where it's actually off in the viewport when the very first frame that it's scheduled in, and you made that part of the process, and it's not going to show up in any other way, perhaps, that you wouldn't like. You see nothing shows right here. That's another way to just check for such a system that would be relevant to that kind of a workflow for some theme that's going on with these light morph nodes here. And then they all go down and with their animation so that the little note flop from, or however you would like to really describe its entry, it's like jumping out, a bulge of water that then, takes its place and flops down as it starts moving vertically down. As soon as that little flop ends, it's like its momentum just like thrusts it into the acrobats of the character that the water creates and drives it down into the keys, like so. All right, so that's that. And now we're going to start setting up the FX. I'll show you just a little bit of what my workflow has been like for the FX as I set up the chain lightning that goes between all of these notes and starts with each magic blast that's being used to procure each section of notes. Let's get out of the render section here. Let's go to the MorphNotes controller. And we're going to leave actually these on because these have to be keyframed on their location based on the evolution of the morphing process. And let's go to the first frame where it becomes visible. All right, there we go. All right, so yep, let's get the asset browser up. And again, so for this one, I do actually remember specifically which package this is. This is all from SuperHive. This is from the AAA people, I believe, is their store name, and it's the Omega Particles pack. And I have been using this laser system, or the laser 2 is what's chaining and everything. It looks like electricity. Just bring it in without notes, and that's one thing. It really, helps the evolution look cooler and stuff like that. Right. Yeah, so we need to get a node intro FX, which is the name of the collection that all these lasers go into is called. Okay. Node intro FX. And let's see, so I have 11 nodes. That means I need 10 lasers. And I will create a collection called node. 1, 2, 7, 8, 9. That should be 9. And let's just give that a TrackTime suffix. Okay. Okay. And yep, so we got laser 2 here. It's going into the active collection. Uncheck instance. Okay. Switch over into the shader editor. And we need to give this plane, and it carries on into all the other planes. Switch it over to the transparent material shader. All right. As you can see, yep, so this one has it, and now that one will have it too. All right, and now since I'm just going to give all of the lasers their own settings in the properties panel, just so I don't have to go through the node set. This is someone else's node set, so I'm less familiar with it. I am just actually going to go into the extras and the animation tools, and I'm going to pull up the G and batch controls here. Okay, pull that up. There we go, and it pulls up an identical setup to what we would see here in the properties panel. And so, yeah, so the only thing that I'm going to be changing, this is very important, turn off this, so this value will not be passed on because you need these to all stay local to their collection. Obviously I'm not changing any of these other things, even though it's like none of these work with any kind of local instance or anything like that, such as the plane that you would need the collider laser to for. And so I will keep, it's useless to toggle those. Those aren't changing. I'll uncheck the sparks because we're not using sparks. It runs things up a little much, but it can look fine. But it's just nothing you absolutely need. And so just get rid of that. I like my fade threshold at 0.65. I like the intensity a little bit higher at about like 2.46 or 2.4. Yeah, just something like that, 2.48. I'll just go with that. Um, let's see. Yep, sparks, that. Yep, and everything else is just fine. Make sure he has the laser to point light. That should stay local, so we're going to uncheck that. And yes. So we'll just go up to our selection here, laser 2. Yeah, that's gonna select the points. Um, let's see. Yeah, yeah, that's okay. They have too close of a name. So there's not very many of them anyway, so I'll just go and manually select these. Okay, so just double check. Oh yeah, now it gave me a new active. Let's go back to this, make this the active, and then toggle our bottom active. Okay, yeah, and so we have this. All the little profile is still the same. Sparks is off. Intensity 2.48. Fade threshold 0.65. Let's say we toggled off all the local values. Laser 2 point, colliders laser 2 is toggled off, so these won't be passed on. And we'll apply to that. All right, yep, copy GN settings to 10 objects. And now let's go into the bottom one and see, did this pass on? It did. Yes, so cool. And that's just a quick way of getting all your settings up. So now all that you have to do is put in the start frame and end frame. And yes, yes. So also with these selected, I'm just going to run into, let's take that out of the end panel. Yes, so this is where the cacher tools come in handy. For these, you will benefit very heavily from having them baked. Sometimes you'll get a far weaker instance of it, and it won't look like it should um, if you don't bake it. Sometimes it will, but it's best just not to play around with gambling whether or not it's going to do it. Bake the nodes you can. It doesn't take that long. Obviously, I'm going to have to go through each one of these individually, but that's what you'll have to do is go into the geometry node set, put a bake node, um, at the end of it, put it in your hotkeys. That's what I do, and yeah, then space or whatever bake, get the bake node out, and then so with all of these selected, you will then go into, let's see, change the scope to selected objects, assign unique caches to all node sets, and that just keeps them very secure and does everything for us. Boom. All right. And so you can see how that works. When we go down into the bake, it switches this over to disk, which is by default at packed. And you can see the little file system it creates for us, geometry nodes, laser 2. So you got node set, object name, file name, Blender cacher. There you go. Yeah, it's very secure like that. We'll just leave that as is, and that's how it is for all of these. And so we are done here. And now it's time to start setting up the first node, or the first laser, if you will. And so the start frame is going to be 2847. And as a general rule, I've just been keeping the lasers going for a system of 12 frames. And so that will leave us at 2859. And boom. Then you select the plane, scale it down so it's easier to work with. And this is actually kind of what the lightning will look like if you um, don't bake your node sets. Normally it will give you the full blast when you first run it and stuff like that, but yeah, sometimes if you reload the file or undo something and that kind of stuff, it makes it a little bit you know less formed. Really, normally the lightning will be touching this with various different like lightning bolts going into the little plane right there. That's the endpoint that you control the end with. And so just for the first one, you just start the endpoint at some random place, and it's going to meet the node that's going to be preceding this one as soon as that enters into the scene and breaks the waterfall. And let's see, and so we set our laser keyframe. I'll just key every 2 frames. Sometimes I key every one, just depending if it's moving out of the waterfall, only in that place a little bit faster, and the key's not going to be like super accurate at 2, and so it needs 1. So just line it up like that. Location, grab the plane. So this is going to be the plane's endpoint. And with how the plane's moving, we should just make sure that oops, that our laser keyframes are correct and how they were created, just because it could really, like, the pivot's a little bit different with how it's like rotating from the side over here. And so these actually maybe need to be a little bit closer. It's hard to say. Let's have a look. Okay. Oh, whoops, I must have not keyframed. Yeah. So because the pivot starts with its endpoint going that way, it doesn't really quite. Looks fine there. 1, 2, just need to be fixed up in one spot. There you go. Moved out every 2. Then we got a new one. Change the endpoint on the first one. Get the second one started. Our playhead says 2852. Yeah, and that's how it normally looks when it first starts. So we'll take that. Get the second node that came in from the waterfall and give that the laser, and then the plane for that one goes into the third node, and just as for the fourth laser or the next laser, that will get the laser head, and then the other will get the plane, and it just goes in from that point. Because the laser always closes in going towards the plane. And that was just kind of how I liked it. And okay, yeah, so that's kind of my workflow for this part of the FX, and I'll just run through the rest of these and stop the recording and pick up on that part. Okay, now that that's all done, and I'll show it to you a little bit here. I'll show it again after everything's been baked with the morph nodes off, but this is kind of what it looks like. Hopefully it doesn't crash. It looks a lot stronger when you bake it, and you are also trying to move through the timeline with all those morph nodes on, along with the laser nodes at the same time. So that's that. Yeah, next is the water splashes, and so to start with that, I'm going to start by disabling all the morph nodes collections, and so we'll just hide that. We'll show the notes because the notes are the ones breaking the barriers of the waterfall. So we're going to create the splashes around them. And you can kind of see a little bit of a better electricity. You'll get a more vibrant electricity. Um, or the electricity from the lasers will be more vibrant once they're baked. But yeah, get a little nice preview there. All right, and so I will just go back to that when everything's ready to be baked after the water splashes are all set up. And start by appending the water objects that are already kind of set up just from another file. I'll take from one that I know that these ones are ready to go. Some of them I'm having to go through and just fix up certain things with their Z. All of them are fine, but some of them already have Z location keyframe values on them, and I don't want anything to do with that. I know this file doesn't have that, so I'll search water objects part 2. All right, and yeah, so I'll just delete everyone, but or all of them except for 19. Delete that. Void 9. And since these are nodes that have to be baked, these will already be baked. And I need to go into the extras of the animation. Selected objects is on. Good. Assign unique caches to all node sets. Boom. All right, we'll save that. Pull up the geometry node editor again. Let's just delete these bakes. Delete. Delete. And also, yeah, so these are splashes that I created out of node sets. And if you want to use them, they are in the FX library. Let's see, thick water splash and thin water splash is here somewhere. If it's not, I need to add it. Yeah, I need to add the thin ones. But yeah, it's a thick and thin water splash. The thin ones will be in there as well, and you'll see what I mean. Here they're called water splash and water splash big. That's what they're appended in as. So, all right. So caches are refreshed. Boom. Let's get rid of that for now. Zoom out the timeline so we can grab the water. Let's go to this point. Let's wait for when it first breaks the water's surface. And boom. Okay. Let's have it sit in that little opening that gets created with the water. Slide it up on the Y. Alright. Look at the camera. Looks good. Okay, yeah, and so that's just pretty much the general rule that I've been sitting with. I just grab them as they are together, and then yeah, start after the third keyframe that you'll see here, and it just seems to work generally pretty well. This is what they look like. So, the first keyframe, that's like wait, no, let's see how to, yeah, that's when the splash is initially growing out. It goes from here, from 2,846 to 3 frames later, 2,849, growing to the value of 7 from 0.840, and then up and then its final keyframe that goes to negative 4.95 is at 2,867. And then for the thin water splash, yeah, so that starts at 2,843, and then it's enabled at 2,845. Of course, that can just be a keyframe away. For some reason, it's 2. And then, yeah, so it goes from a negative 7.92 with a length value of 3, all the way to 10.680, going from keyframes 2,845 to 2,861. And so I'm just kind of keeping that system. And so yes, when the note first breaks the surface of the waterfall, I have been counting 3 keyframes, and then the very first frame is where it meets the node. And so let's find the next one. And now Shift D, right click, move, get this all lined up too. And then after these are all set up, I'm going to go through the odd number of these and move them down on the Z axis or keyframing them to move down along with the note. So it's like every other one of the splashes are moving down with the note, and it kind of gives it a nice, more realistic effect. Move this over. And these thin splashes, I actually got a lot of the logic from the I believe the YouTube channel is called like Brandon Brandon something. He pretty much he has like his own better version of almost every geometry node that there is, and yeah, it had some good ideas. And there's some really good node sets. If anyone is ever interested, they should definitely look that up on YouTube. You'll find it if you just search something to do with Brandon and Studio or Brandon and Brandon something. Yes, you'll find it. It's a pretty common geometry node source tutorial or a tutorial channel. And then so yeah, let's go here. And I believe did I duplicate that? No, I didn't. Put that back. Okay, and that should be everything. That's all the notes. All right. And you got to be careful running the timeline as those draw up, just because Blender will most likely crash unless they're baked. Um, let's see. So let's start keyframing the odd ones. So what I do, let's see, 1 and 1. Let's go to where it first starts. Let's have a look at it in the camera. Location, about here. Okay, 3 and 3. Let's start with the one where we first started. It was 19. Okay, let's have a look at that. Yep, there it goes. Alright, let's see. I hope I saved that. I don't think that I did. Oh, I did? Fantastic. That's fortunate. Yep, so let's even. What's this one? That is 10. Let's do that one. It looks like it would be complete with that one keyframed. That's the Z-axis location. Okay. Oh, right. And so now is time to get started with the baking of the nodes that needs to be baked. And in a lot of cases, especially for the areas of this piece where you're getting these really pompous eighths on the left hand, then subdivisions consistently on the right hand, the eighths will come in with spirals, and there's a shot of magic that goes into each eighth that feeds the subdivisions, that are sixteenths on the right hand. Um, and so yeah, and there's plenty of other concepts where just significant like eighths and thematic sections, where it would make sense to kind of put magical spirals, and so there's like these two little water spirals that are just like intertwining in between the note and going along with it, with these like they work with like it's like a trim curve, so it's like the start and the end are constantly going to make sure that the node character and its evolution looks like they're being wrapped in the spirals of these two water along curve nodes that you can get in the FX library, which they are actually right. Let's see. I think actually that's because you have to place it on a curve, so that would be this one. Yeah, splashing water along curve, and yeah. So I don't think I'm going to put anything like that in this file. I really need to get moving, and so I mean I could, I suppose, just to show where that would make sense. Put them on the eighths here. here, here. Um, but it seems like it would be better just to leave it because it's like you get these really pompous eighths that feed in, the sections building up to the finale and the finale itself. And this is kind of like a bridge part in between those where it's like, it's a do 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 do, and then you start like building up into the finale. If you've ever heard Invention Number 13, which most probably have, it's probably one of the more famous pieces of music in history, at least in piano culture. And so, yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it without spirals because it makes the spirals and the sections that this bridges maybe seem a little bit more thematic. But you'll see them if you check out the demo. Um, and yeah, so now it's time to start baking the nodes. Pull up the geometry node editor here. And since I duplicated all of these off of the original two that were 19, water splash 19, water splash big 19, we're gonna just select all of these. We're gonna go back up into our extras and the animation tools, and we're going to make sure that this is toggled to make unique node trees, because if you see, they're all the same tree. So if you bake them, you're just going to get literally whatever your last bake was, and so you don't want that. We're going to separate them, give them all their own caches. There we go. They've all been localized and they're all just ready to bake. And now we'll just narrow in the timeline. So bake anything that's not necessary. Okay, let's just disable all the nodes so it bakes faster, more stably. Save and run the bake. And it's pretty much just a rinse and repeat for all of these. And so I'll just skip this part and start recording as soon as I finished, and we'll get on to the process of baking the lightning. Okay, so now that the water nodes are all baked and ready to go, I'm just going to change their collection name here so I don't have any conflicts with the collection that they were appended in as. Just change it back to water objects. Then we're going to go into the extras of the FX panel where the naming tools are at. Active collection, make sure that's checked, and apply TrackTime from .blend. Alright, let's see, minimize that, and I suppose while we have it up, let's just get this logged into the schedule. Say 19 was the first one. So just a safe entry point seems to be 2,841. On that, make sure it's collection, use active, and we'll just go with 2,897. Save that. Okay, we can disable these. Okay. And so now for these, if I just go in here, see I already added a bake node into that one. Oops. Make sure animation is toggled. And one quick way you can add that node in is to just drag out for a new node and then release the left mouse button, and that will pull up the search for nodes. You can also put add into your quick favorites. Go to add, or just right click, I already have it. It's on my shortcuts. And Q is quick favorites. That's your shortcuts. And yeah, so let's bake this one. And these ones bake really fast. Yeah, and so it's pretty much a rinse and repeat also for this one. And I'll just start recording again after I finish all this. Okay, with that all done, now um, we're going to log the note intro FX, the lightning chain, and I'll actually, yes, I'll show it to you how it looks baked. It looks a little bit more potent now that it's baked, and yeah. Why is that so short-lived? Yeah, no, that's just how its location keyframes look. Okay, yeah, so let's see, so the first one, let's put it in 2845. Alright. At 2,889. Okay, cool. And so that completes the FX part of the workflow that I have been engaged in. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, so we need to log in the character magic. And a good time to bring that in is 2,826. Ah, wait. But first, I need to change the suffix from the TrackTime file that it was appended from. Let's go back into the extras of the FX panel active collection. Supply TrackTime file there. Okay. And now we can use the active. Let's verify that's in there. Yep. Okay. And a good time is perfect is 2,850. Wonderful. Okay. And now we are on the area of the workflow where the water nodes are going to be applied to the notes and the characters. And so what I've been doing thus far is just appending in an instance collection that was created from previous files that will just have exactly what I need to just copy the node sets on other than rig modifiers onto all the water nodes, and I can just leave those and the character ones. Depending on their size, I might, and the node or the character that it was originally taken from, I might need to change the outline value and the properties of each note, but other than that, it's a pretty quick process. So let me get that in there. Um, let's just go function. Let's pick this one. Okay, so and that's going to bring in its orphan objects because its drivers run off landscape and its relationships for parents are, well, scroll bounds, which is a child of node container. And yeah, so this was before I added the concept of dash note mesh to everything. So I need to add that in there because that's how you get a hold of anything that's a note mesh, and it's going to just select the top level object last. And so let me rename this. Okay, so we're going to go into our selection tools here, and that is in the extras of the animation tools. So we go, that's a suffix, dash note mesh. Okay, yeah, so it's selected 12 objects, perfect, and our active mesh is the one that we need everything from, and so that works out. And we're going to run this operator, copy non-rig modifiers from active, and watch as the notes change here. Here, let me get it to a different spot on the timeline. There we go. And there we go. And that's that. And so now we can, let's see, change what we're looking at here and get the characters active. So let's hide the notes, show the characters. There we go. Go back into our selection tools. Change that. Dash char mesh. Voila. And yep, selected 12 objects. Our active object is the one we need everything from. And we're going to copy non-rig modifiers from active. And there we go. And just so I can see what the outlines settings look like on all of them, I'm just going to run that down. So there's nothing in the way. Let's go into, and they're in their full dive pose, going completely vertically down. Let's see here. Let's turn on the viewport, or preview shading, texture shading. Let's let that load here for a little bit. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, and so their outlines look a little weak. Not really a surprise, so I can, yeah, really just select all of them and I think change that value. I think first I'm going to get rid of this instance collection that I needed to get all that stuff on them. Delete hierarchy, and we'll delete the hierarchy of both of these. Okay. So let's just select all of the dash caramels that's selected 11. Perfect. Let's go into our batch controls here. Let's increase the outline thickness. So that's this little white line, obviously of line thickness of the outline. Makes them a little easier to see if it's a little bit thicker. Just make sure that there's like no local settings that I need here. All right, and all right. Yeah, it changes them, but for some reason, like I don't know if it's like how a desk graph works or something like that, where it's like it doesn't actually run on them, so you still have to kind of like go through each of these and just refresh the node set, even though the number's already there, and it should show that. Did that one. Okay, yep, cool. So here, let's see. Okay, yeah, so the next one item that I have on the agenda is to normalize all the materials. So yeah, again, like I was saying at the beginning of this tutorial video, this is to keep organized with cryptomat and stuff like that. Where you're going to be going through cryptomats are created from material IDs, and so you don't get like all these materials like you see character base .002. Everything's just character base, so you don't have to make another node set for character base .002 when you're going through all this and you're like appending in objects just to mass pass on the settings from that active object onto other objects, and a quick fix for things. Sometimes materials can get duplicated and all that kinds of stuff. That material existed already in the scene as a linked instance that wasn't actually used on anything, just from something else that happened, and so on and so forth. And yeah, so that's what I'm just going to go through and do here. So just click normalize materials, all objects, and we'll let it run. Okay, yeah, so rename to, removed, like, how many did it remove? Removed 72, yep, cool. And yeah, so now we're going to go and make sure all our drivers are going to work. We're going to just go and toggle landscape, something just universal and easy, and we're just going to retarget drivers again. Be mindful that this is not safe to use on anything that's like a keyframed value, like for the tree nodes and stuff like that. The tree growth is tied to a bunch of different driver values, the shape key values that make the tree character, and turn from a log, and the growth of its trees and all that kinds of stuff inside of a master slider. So anything that works like that, it's going to break that whole driver system. Do remember that. But it will, for anything that's just a basic driver that runs off of like some object that is active within the scene, this will be a quick fix for. So I'll just run that. All right. And let's see. And so, yes, now is the probably the final piece of the process. Everything's logged in the render streamer. I haven't actually printed to the schedule. I'm going to do that separately. But everything looks good. It's all inside the range. There's no duplicates. There's no end is less than start. There's no same start and end entries, and so on and so forth. And so I'm good to go there. I got my 3 extra entries along with the 11 morph nodes. That's all correct. Um, so now I'm going to bring the project prep tools back in because I have a really heavy purge operator that's in there just to make the linked instance that goes into the render streamer even lighter, because the whole thing with the render streamer, it's really cool how it works. Linked instances render faster than the stuff from the actual scene or appended objects and collections would. And so it actually renders faster than just the inbuilt render animation that you would find up here. But yeah, just to make things even lighter, I've been taking like control rigs and stuff like that off. However, it's something that you do need to be mindful of if you do use this. So let's get that in the scene, and I'll go over into it, talk about it a little bit. Minimize. Yep. So hard clean dot blend file. And so this is going to purge anything that's not visible in the outliner. And this can bring some issues if you're using anything that is a collection that uses instances that collection it, when you bring in like the node set, say, that collection's actually not bringing the actual instance of that collection, it's just filling it in the slot and using it as a link from the other file, it's going to completely purge those objects and it's going to break just that whole node set. And the trees worked exactly like that. And so make sure that you don't have any kind of geometry node effect that is working like that and have that in a different file. But linked instances are lighter when control rigs are taken away from them and they're converted back into their original bones and that kind of thing. And so just to make for a lighter linked instance and a lighter file that everything is coming from and all that kinds of stuff, I am hard cleaning the outliner. Or not the outliner, hard cleaning the file so that anything that's not visible in the outliner or used in the outliner just doesn't exist. So it's like if you were to like append something from this file afterwards, um, you will not get like any like orphans that weren't absolutely necessary and stuff like that. So if you're going to append an object that was rigged, you won't get like all these WGT object, or if you're using auto rig CS objects and stuff like that. So first I'm going to save it. Then I'm going to go and take that saved file, and you won't actually see it on the screen because I'm filming for a window capture, not a display capture. But I'm just going to make a backup or take this particular TrackTime file, copy it, and paste it into my control rig BG files just in case I ever needed to go back and change anything. And I'll just do that real quick. Just give me one moment. All right. All right, I've got that done. Okay, and then we're just gonna, and I'll show the console. Oh, you can't see the console because it's a display capture. Hmm. Yeah, obviously runs off of Windows console system. All right, so, yeah, and so then run the operator. And if you have the Blender console pulled up, it's going to show you all the objects that it's, in a model process purging, but it doesn't show anything actually going on other than a printout that it's done and how many objects it purged. All right, yeah. So and it purged, removed 2,884 objects, and let's see, that seems to do it. For just like what an example workflow could be like for doing a 3D piano. Every theme is of course going to be different with everything that you're doing with notes, but it's fun and helpful to be able to figure out as fast of a workflow and most efficient workflow of getting through everything as quick as possible with as little error as possible. And this is just something to help people who are interested in doing a 3D piano roller become more familiar with the tools and they're sculpting their own workflow so that it is most efficient from the very get-go. And with that, I will leave this one and see you in the next one.